Welcome, everyone. My name is Marissa. I am a behavior analyst and licensed behavior analyst, and I currently work at the Else for Autism Foundation. Today, I'm going to be presenting on behavior analytic strategies for effective toilet training at home. If you know me, or if you're just getting to know me, first thing you should know about me is I love to talk about toilet training. Don't know what that says about me as a person, but as a clinician, this is one of my most favorite things to be working on because it opens doors to so many great independent skills. So we're going to dive right in shortly, but the first thing I want to remind you is if you are a practitioner here today who is looking for CEU credit, you're in the right place. All you need to do is remain engaged in our training today, and I'm going to be giving you 2 secret code words throughout our presentation. Just jot those down, and once you submit into our system at the end of this, you just need to remember those in order for you to get your credit. So welcome to any practitioners, parents, caretakers, teachers, therapists, people who want to learn about potty training. You're all welcome here, and my goal today is to make sure that you leave feeling that you are ready and have a little bit of a roadmap to toilet training at home. So here we go. So first, I'd love to give a disclaimer, and I give this because I always want to avoid the toxicity of comparison that can happen when children are involved and child rearing is involved and the internet is involved. The strategies that we review today are general evidence-based practices for toilet training at home. The strategies I'm going to be reviewing are only targeting daytime/awake time, meaning we're not going to be talking about nighttime training. That's a separate conversation. Still toilet training, but just a separate next step, so to speak. Suggestions that I'm going to go over today can be modified and adapted for all learners and for needs within families. I like to consider and remind you that toilet training can often be more difficult for caretakers than it actually is for the child. And we're going to talk about why as we continue. And please keep in mind that there's no one-size-fits-all approach, and that I don't want you to get stuck on this feeling of comparing your journey to someone else's journey. Because again, you might be trying something that I'm going to be talking you through today, different versions of support through toilet training, but maybe someone else in a Facebook group or in your community is doing it a different way, and it's happening at a certain rate. And just keep in mind that not everybody's plan is the same, and that's okay. And lastly, of course, it's the most important thing to do is to commit to consistency for success. Toilet training is effective when the plan that is implemented is continued across anybody who's working with that child. And the more effective a plan is can be drawn back to how consistent it was and how persistent you were as a caretaker. And we're going to kind of talk through why that's the case as we continue through our training today. So that's my little disclaimer before we dive in. So our learning objectives. Participants will identify prerequisite skills necessary for toilet training, because there are some prerequisites that we keep in mind. Participants will learn about toilet training from the behavior analytic perspective. I'm a behavior analyst, so I'm going to be presenting research from the behavior analytic community. That doesn't mean that I'm not open and willing to read from other communities, but this is where my training and specialty comes from. Participants will gain an understanding of how to develop a toileting plan at home. And lastly, we're going to review 6 evidence-based steps to success. So here's our agenda for today. First, we're going to be talking through our behavior analytic toileting strategies. We're going to be talking about our prerequisites, materials needed, steps to success, any supplemental materials I might recommend, any special considerations, and how you can get started tomorrow. So there are a few milestones for us to consider when we're thinking about toilet training. And like anything else, toileting is behavior, like anything else that we do. It is considered a functional skill, something we need to learn for independence. And most children master potty training between 4 and 5 years of age, but it is recommended to get started once the prerequisites are showing signs, and we're going to get to that next. And remember, some programs also make potty training a prerequisite or requirement for enrollment, and some other after-school programs or anything like that oftentimes will require toilet training to be a skill that's either emerging or mastered. So being potty trained provides access to things, right? And of course, it reduces opportunities for vulnerability. And I add that in here because it's so important to remember that as our learners, whether they're on the spectrum, typically developing, anywhere in between, they are vulnerable to people touching their bodies and supporting them and helping them, right? So in a classroom, whether it's one teacher to 30 kids, or in a classroom where there's a teacher's assistant or paraprofessionals, your child or a child that you know might be susceptible to needing some help. And so being potty trained just reduces the availability for vulnerability, especially in situations like that that's private. And it's important for us to always be thinking ahead towards independence. So as long as we're on the same page with that, we're going to jump right in and keep going. So what are our goals within toilet training? So when you're establishing a toilet training plan, these are the 3 goals to consider. You want to think about these 3 goals when determining what works for you and where you might want to get started. So number 1, the learner goes to the bathroom on a time schedule. This is where step 1 is. This is where a predetermined schedule is based off of their wet and dry schedule. And this is going to be all of these things we're going to review in a few short minutes. This should be used as your first step when you're just beginning to start toilet training, is using a timed schedule. That's step 1. Step 2 is learner requesting to use the bathroom some way, whether it's gesturing to the bathroom, whether it's signaling on their body that they have to go to the bathroom, whether they say, I need to go potty, whether it's a picture exchange or a point. The learner may need help completing the routine, but they have asked and advocated to go, which is an incredible step to be at. And then our third step, and the step that everybody wants to get to, is step 3, which is that a learner independently goes to the bathroom without prompts, reminders, or support. And that's how we want to get you there. So before we get to our next slide, I felt like this was really valuable to just review some ABA terms to remember. As a reminder, I am a behavior analyst, so you may hear me say things like antecedent, reinforcement, extinction throughout the training today. And I want to make sure that you have something to reference in case you're not familiar with those terms. So an antecedent is the thing that happens before the behavior. Behavior is anything we do or say. Consequence is what happens after the behavior occurs. Reinforcement is anything that occurs after the behavior that makes the behavior more likely or less likely to occur again under similar conditions. And then lastly, we have extinction, which is an ugly word in behavior analysis, but I ask you to try to unlearn that for this context, is that extinction isn't an ugly word in behavior analysis, or it doesn't mean something ugly. It just means that when something was previously reinforced, it no longer is. So as an example of extinction, if you've never heard this term before, I like to use the example of the vending machine. Let's say you've been working at the same company for 5 years, and every day at 1 o'clock, you grab your wallet, you go over to that vending machine and you pull out $1. And every day for the last 5 years, you got your afternoon snack. But all of a sudden you put your $1 in and the machine doesn't do anything. It says error, or it takes your money and it doesn't give you your snack. Well, that was a previously reinforced behavior for the last 5 years. And then now it's no longer reinforced, and it might occasion feeling kind of frustrated. Maybe you sending a message to your office manager, hey, can you fix the vending machine? Or maybe you might get a little frustrated and hangry. That's just an example of what extinction can look like in everyday life. So I, as a behavior analyst, like to look at toilet training like this, as a conceptual analysis. And what that means is really breaking it down into that A, B, C format. So here we're looking at, again, as a reminder, antecedent is things that occur before, behavior is what we do or say, and consequence, which is what happens after the behavior, and it determines if that behavior will occur again in the future. So let's draw our eyes over to our antecedent column. The motivation to go to the bathroom is that you feel uncomfortable. There's a sensation that's different, that isn't neutral. Your bladder is full. Potentially you have a stomach ache, right? And also a signal to that is that there's an area that you can go to feel better, right? And so we learn that in the presence of this toilet, whether it's a potty or an adult toilet or a urinal, that toilet signals reinforcement to us. It means I get to go and I get to feel better. And so in our behavior column, that's urinate or poop, right? That happens in the presence of a potty. And our consequence, reinforcement, is you're no longer feeling uncomfortable. There's some relief. You're feeling better. Maybe people are praising you for going. It's an exciting thing when you're learning how to go in the potty. Or extinction happens, meaning you might not have any reinforcement. Just in case if you have an accident or something like we're going to talk about later, maybe reinforcement isn't available. Or then we have something what we would consider the word punishment. And again, ugly word in behavior analysis. We need to do a better job of finding some better words. But essentially, punishment just means that something is presented that reduces the motivation to engage in it again in the future. So something like maybe having a disapproving face or having to change your clothes, having to clean yourself up, things like that could be considerably punishing to someone who has an accident. Now we're going to talk through our toileting prerequisites. And again, we're saying this as a very general kind of consideration that there are variations of these prerequisites. So take them, but don't take them as law, is what I want to encourage. And before we jump into our toileting prerequisites, I want to give you your secret code word. Your first secret code word is donut, D-O-N-U-T. Please provide that at the end. Make sure you wrote it down. Again, it's donut, and that is going to be your secret code word in order for you to access those CEU credits. Okay, so our toileting prerequisites. We really want to find out, and we're going to talk about how we're going to find out next, but you want to make sure that your child is able to stay dry for between 1 to 2 hours. You want to make sure that they're able to transition to the bathroom, meaning, will they take your hand if you say, hey, let's go? And you walk over to the bathroom and they wash their hands, they're willing to be in the bathroom. There's no associated fear yet with the bathroom, and hopefully none to follow. That they can follow basic, simple instructions like stand up, come here, take my hand, go, walk. Very basic instructions. And lastly, or second to last, that they can sit on the potty for 3 to 5 minutes. And that doesn't mean that they have eliminated on the potty yet, just means that they are able to sit there and tolerate sitting on the potty for up to 3 to 5 minutes. And lastly, that they don't demonstrate intensive challenging behavior. And I say that with a grain of salt because, of course, children who experience challenging behavior can absolutely be potty trained. But I put that as a prerequisite because sometimes if a challenging behavior is too intense that the child is having a really hard time with and the families need support with, we would recommend, let's get that under control first. Let's work on finding your replacement behavior, use some functional communication, work with a behavior analyst to help you in getting them in a stable place. And then we'll say, okay, I think now we're ready for toilet training once we meet these other criteria. So I say that, but also don't want to dissuade you to say, oh, my child might experience intensive challenging behavior. They can't be potty trained. I don't want you to think that at all. So here are your materials needed. Number 1, we really want you to eliminate the use of a diaper or pull-up, but they can still be worn at night. I don't want you to think you have to go all or nothing. Nighttime toileting can take a very long time to catch up to daytime toileting, and that is completely normal. Usually can take up to 5 to 7 years for a child to be fully nighttime trained. So I don't want you to think you have to throw them away completely. However, we do recommend eliminating them for the daytime training. Then we want you to get some underwear. It's recommended to get light colors like gray so that you can see the accident occurring, or potentially if you're home and you're safe, you can let them walk around without underwear on. We do recommend having underwear on if you are moving around a lot and you have things to do, just so that you can visually catch it when it's about to happen, because you can see it in the underwear. Next, we would recommend things like loose-fitting clothing, things that can be very easily manipulated, pulled up and down, and items that require minimal help from adults, so no zippers or snaps or ties on their clothing. Possibly using things like pull shoes or shoes that can be very easily rinsed off and thrown into the wash. A strong reinforcer, and we're going to spend time talking about why this is very, very valuable and very important for toilet training, but it is a material that you need. This reinforcer will only be available for toileting once you determine it. And lastly, a data sheet. And it's recommended to keep track using a data sheet, but of course, if you're rolling with the punches at home, you can keep track in an app, you can keep track in your notes, but it is valuable for you to see progress happen in real time, for you to take data on the progress of your child. So here are our steps to success. First, take baseline. Second, remove that diaper and pull up and introduce underwear. Number 3, identify a powerful reinforcer. Number 4, schedule trips to the bathroom. Number 5, determine procedure for managing accidents. And 6, stay the course and be persistent. So step 1, what is step 1? Step 1 is baseline. This means that you haven't taught anything yet, that there's no skills that are already embedded in that child's routine around toileting, that they are really kind of a blank slate with toileting. So here you're starting with wet, dry checks. It's important to know where your child is at. So we recommend starting within every 30 minutes or so, just saying something along the lines of, hey, I'm going to check your diaper now. And just jotting down what time they were wet and what times within 30 minutes they were dry, because then this will help inform our procedure that we ultimately put in place. And I put the words on the screen for you to see, because it is important to let a child know that you're coming over in their space and you're going to touch their body. So saying something like, oh, I'm going to check your diaper right now. I'm going to count to 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you check their diaper, you write it down, say, great job letting me check your diaper. Awesome work. Really let them know what you're going to do. You don't want children to get used to people coming close to them and touching them without warning them or giving them some sort of warning that that's going to be happening, because you don't want them to get used to that no one is going to tell them that they're doing that. And here with that, we want to look at how long between when their diaper or pull-up is wet. And at this time during baseline, they're in a diaper and a pull-up. You're not taking it off of them yet. But this allows us to develop an appropriate schedule and routine. And then you're going to keep track using that wet, dry data sheet. And I have a sample of one on the next sheet. And again, you can use what works for you. And I recommend collecting data for up to 3 days before starting a formal toileting procedure, because 3 days is a really good way to see a pattern. So here is an example of baseline of a toilet training data sheet. This one is broken up by 15-minute increments, but we would recommend, again, every 30 minutes or so, unless your child is having accidents faster than that, then we would bump it down to 15 minutes, and we're going to talk about why shortly. So here you're just keeping track between 6 and 6:15, were they wet or dry? They were wet, okay. 6:15 to 6:30, were they wet or dry? Dry. And the sick column is for when you start toilet training. And so you're going to, this is a data sheet that can be utilized across the board from baseline all the way through intervention, where we're keeping track of what happened when they ultimately do sit on the potty. So this is just phase 1 of doing wet dry check, and then phase 2 is checking off what happened when they actually did sit on the potty. Step 2, removing the diaper. And as a reminder, this is just us introducing underwear. We, again, recommend using gray or light blue, so you want to be able to see the onset of the accident. White or dark underwear can be hard to see, and have lots of underwear ready. Remember, accidents are going to happen, and they are perfectly okay. They are teaching opportunities for you and for your child. There are some special considerations. If you're leaving to run an errand and have to bring your learner, the diaper can go back on, but when you come home, it should come right back off. And again, as a reminder, a diaper can still be worn at night in the early phases of toilet training, because again, it does take a little bit longer to make that connection at nighttime. Step 3, very important. And I'm going to give you your second secret code word while we're talking about reinforcers. Your second secret code word is SAGE, S-A-G-E, because my reinforcer is time with my puppy, Sage. So again, your second secret code word is SAGE. Awesome. Okay, so determining a reinforcer. This is the most important step. And I say that because a toileting plan is as effective as what is the consequence to going in the toilet or not going in the toilet. So the toilet training process, again, is effective when there is an established and clear contingency. And what does that mean? It means that a child is learning, when I pee and poop in the potty, good things happen. When I pee and poop in my diaper or pull up or underwear, anywhere other than the potty, nothing exciting happens. If anything, mom's kind of mad and is like giving me a little bit of a sad face. So That's what I mean by a clear contingency. I do this and get this. I do this and nothing happens. It's understanding the antecedent and the behavior consequence and being able to understand that in the context of toilet training. And an isolated reinforcer is crucial to toilet training, the toilet training process. So what do I mean by that? An isolated reinforcer is something that has been determined to be highly, highly preferred. I do recommend doing like an informal preference assessment to report on how often a child wants that item or that activity or that edible, whatever it is. You can also use, of course, anecdotal observation. A lot of parents say to me, like, I know what it is. It's 100% M&Ms, or it's always going to be going on the swing, or access to Cocoa Melon. Whatever it is, it is something that can be offered only if there is success on the potty. And I repeat, if and only if there's success on the potty. So if your reinforcer is M&Ms, M&Ms should not be given after dinner, should not be given when you're in the car. They're only being provided if and only if there's success on the potty. And it's recommended to use something quick that can be easily delivered, like access to a tangible, like a quick video or stickers, or a quick swing on the swing, or an edible that can be easily consumed. So when you're thinking about reinforcers, try to think of things in the context of something that's quick and easily deliverable. Because if you're thinking about things like, oh, a reinforcer could be like a trip to Disney, or a trip to the store even, that might not always be accessible to you. And you want something to be delivered right away, right immediately when your child goes to the potty, on the potty, so that that contingency is clear to them, that they start to learn, whoa, when this happens, good things happen to me. That's amazing. I want to do it again. That's our goal. Next, step 4 is scheduled trips to the bathroom. So once you've determined your wet-dry check, once you've determined through wet-dry checks that you have somewhat of a schedule and that your child kind of consistently is always wet between 9 and 11 and always wet between 3 and 4 and always wet between 7 and 8, those are perfect windows of times for us to concentrate on toilet training. So, and it's just valuable information to know that those are times that you can be kind of expecting them to maybe have an accident and plan accordingly to bring them to the potty during that time. So for an example, if a learner was wet every time you checked a diaper for every 30 minutes, you might want to decrease the time and trip between bathrooms to 15 minutes. This will help occasion the possibility that an accident or success in the potty will occur. I hope that makes sense. You want to kind of beat them to it, right? You want to catch them when there's motivation to go to the potty and not when their bladder is empty. Next, you want to come up with a criteria for advancement or potentially moving a little bit backwards. So if a learner has 3 successes in a row, meaning 30 minutes, timer went off, you bring them to the potty, they eliminate, they get their reinforcer, amazing. That happens again in another 30 minutes and again in another 30 minutes. Then you're going to want to extend your time. You don't want to be going to the bathroom every 30 minutes, right? That's not always sustainable. And we want to increase our children's bladder ability. So you're going to want to extend by 15 to 20 minutes the 4th time you start to go. And this is a fluid kind of thing. You can increase and you can decrease. And as a reminder, if an accident occurs, stick to the schedule. Just because an accident occurs within a 30 minutes, the second that timer goes off, you're going back. So you're not going to reset a timer when an accident occurs. You want to teach your child that we have a schedule. We're going every 30 minutes, even if an accident occurs. And it's important to note that you're going to start that interval after you finish the bathroom routine. So even if your child is on the potty, goes to the potty, you don't start the timer right then and there. You just wait till they go through the bathroom routine. You want to give them a chance, of course, to get more liquids in their body. But right when that bathroom routine is over, whether it's washing their hands and closing the door, that timer starts again for whatever interval you've established. So here is just a little script that we can consider. So, okay, we finished in the bathroom. We're going to set a timer for 15 minutes and try again. Remember, if you go pee-pee in the potty, you get a Swedish fish. And really kind of, I say this because you kind of are a broken record a lot of the time during potty training because consistency is so important. But just being really thoughtful of those reminders of, oh, well, we didn't go this time, but we're going to try again in 15 minutes. Come here, come help me set the timer. Okay, remember, when you go pee-pee in the potty, you get your favorite thing. And now step number 5, also extremely important. All of them are very important, but I find step number 5 can be very tricky. So step 5 is determining a procedure for managing accidents, because let's be real, they're going to happen. But remember, we can turn messes into successes. Accidents are normal and expected, and they're learning opportunities. So first, I want you to think about how you're going to react, and a script can be helpful sometimes. So you can say things like, oh no, we go pee-pee in the potty, and bring them right over to the toilet. Or you can say, oh no, we had an accident. We don't go pee on the floor, we go in the potty. You want to provide potentially a reaction that may startle your child. And I say this because there is some research behind the startle response, because biologically, when you are startled and your bladder is full, you may be more likely to contract your muscles and hold it for a second and make it to the toilet. So if you catch an accident happening in real time, you're going to bring the learner to the potty. And if they tinkle in the potty, you're going to say, oh my gosh, you did it amazing, and completely disregard that they may have had a little bit of an accident. You're so proud of them that they made the connection. Even if you put them on the potty yourself and they just accidentally got some in the potty, you want them to start to learn, wow, this is so exciting. And you want to make sure that the learner makes the connection between that. And this is how we shape toileting behavior. So those opportunities where you catch your child potentially having a little bit of an accident in their underwear or on the floor or wherever, you pick them up, put them right on the potty, and they go, even just a little tinkle, and they hear that sound. And then it's the consequence is you being really happy and providing a reinforcer. That is how we shape toileting behavior. And so when accidents happen, we're still taking learners to the potty at their scheduled time. And of course, accidents are learning opportunities. They're opportunity for contrast and feedback within the learner's world. For example, good things happen when I go in the potty, and things don't really happen. Good things don't happen, or mommy's neutral, or dad's neutral. My caretakers are neutral when I have an accident, or potentially disapprove of this and are feeling or are making it clear that they're kind of disappointed. And that's okay too. All of those things are very okay and natural to happen with potty training. Step number 6, stay the course. And I say this with lots of love, but it's really, really important with toilet training to determine your plan and stay the course. Try to be persistent, consistent, and resilient. Those are the 3 things I want you to remember when you are doing potty training with your child. Mentally prepare for hiccups. They are normal, and we can be flexible. Know that things might get worse before they get better. You might see an extinction burst. You might see things get a little hairy, get a little messy. It can get scary and challenging and emotionally draining, and that is okay. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes toilet training is harder for the caregiver than it actually is for the child, because there's just so many things to consider. We have to be in charge of a schedule and a reinforcer and keeping track of a data sheet and tracking and all of these things. But remember, have reasonable expectations for yourself and your child. Give yourself grace. Give your child grace. There is no perfect journey. And again, avoid that comparison loop. This is your journey. This is your child's journey. So if you're out and someone is saying, I potty trained my child in a day, that's amazing for them. And that might be their journey. Maybe your journey will look the same, or maybe your journey will take 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever it is. It's still your journey. So try not to get lost in the comparison trap. I know it can be hard. And remember that being toilet trained is one of the most important parts of child development. It increases access and ease in the world. It reduces opportunities for vulnerability, and it teaches self-help skills and independence. So as a reminder, you can do hard things and you can keep going. And here are some supplemental materials just to consider if you feel like this fits the needs of your family. Reminder, reinforcers always need to be available. And if you happen to run out of another, have a backup. And again, remember, it needs to be isolated. So something that can be withheld until a successful potty experience has happened. Using things like visual supports can be really helpful. So implementing a visual of the process of what it looks like to wash or to go to the bathroom, which includes bathroom, pull pants down, underwear down, sit on toilet, white bottom, stand up, underwear up, pants up, flush toilet, wash hands. These visuals around your bathroom are no harm, no foul. If anything, you're going to augment the experience, and you're going to be connecting a visual with an action and words, and it's a great opportunity to practice language and labeling and all those wonderful things that we want to see happening, especially around toilet training. You can also use things like a first then board. You'll see here, there's a very beautiful visual of someone having a BM in the toilet and then them seeing exactly what they can earn after it. And so their reinforcers happen to be lollipops and a computer and an iPad and M&Ms, just a good example. You can also use things like a potty chart, especially for learners who have the understanding of the contingency and have delayed gratification. So a potty chart is something where you would have, let's say, hey, you need to go 5 times in the potty, and I'm going to give you a star every time you go to the potty. And when you go 5 times, we get to go to the store and buy a boat, like a whatever, or a car, a little one, not a life-size one. And so that's a way to track toileting as your progress is being made. But early on in toilet training, I want to encourage you to make it really simple and easy, meaning 1 for 1. You know, bathroom, I go on the potty, I get something. I go on the potty, I get something. I have an accident, nothing happens. I have an accident, nothing happens. I go on the potty, something happens, and I'm excited, and I keep doing that because I want more of it. You know, we recommend trialing that for about 2 weeks before you start increasing the wait time between reinforcers. You might also want to hang up like rules of the bathroom. You know, in the bathroom, we sit on the potty for 5 minutes, and after we go on the potty, we get fun things and we wash our hands, or whatever rules of the bathroom within your household. You can review that beforehand. You can kind of use it as a social story and say, you know, this is what I do. I'm a big kid. I don't wear a diaper anymore. I go to the potty. Whatever rules that you feel are appropriate within your house, you're happy to share and have hanging up, or just read kind of as a story. And then also, on the note of stories, there are tons of books about pottying that you can access. I've seen so many of them, especially at Target and on Amazon. There's a ton of books about kids experiencing toilet training and reading that. So I would definitely recommend these are supplemental materials that you can incorporate within your intervention that you choose to do at home. So what can you do tomorrow? If you're wanting to start this with your child, or wanting to give support to somebody who is toilet training at home, or even toilet training at school, start looking for patterns. That's the best place to start, is starting to look at patterns to see what the wet dry checks are showing you. So you're going to conduct those wet dry checks and assess for patterns within your child's day. Get your materials and your mind ready. And I, again, recommend checking every 30 minutes. I'm recommending for you to do this for 1 to 2 weeks. And again, this helps to determine the consistency in your child's routine. So what I'm really encouraging you to do is to not just jump in and say, we're doing toilet training tomorrow. If you choose to do that, amazing. That's great for you. But know that it's okay if you want to do it slow and steady. Within 1 to 2 weeks, you're just doing wet dry checks just to gain access to a pattern within your child's day. And then you might be ready with all of your materials, your reinforcers. You might have a weekend you want to set aside and say, we're going to do it. We have 3 days off. Let's focus on this. We're going to be near the bathroom all day. I want you to have your mind ready, because the worst thing that can happen is you jump in too soon and then you give in early because it's too hard, because it is going to be hard. I'm telling you the truth. But again, toilet training is a window into so much more access and ease in life. And ultimately, my goal as a behavior analyst and working with the families that I do is, how can we get to independence? So this is how we can start to do that for our learners. Here's a list of my references. And that's it for today. So you can follow us on social media, and you can reach out to me personally at marissa.eck@lsforautism.org. I am Marissa Eck. Again, I'm a behavior analyst. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about toilet training. Again, this was really just a crash course in toilet training. I hope it gave you a little bit of a path on how to start and where to begin. And I am hopeful, and I know you can do hard things, and toilet training is a hard thing. So I'm sending you lots of luck to get through it, and I'm here to support you if you have any questions, and sending you a big good luck.